for those Americans who are watching, we do not have a right to self-defense in Australia with lethal or non-lethal means. That was changed in 1996 when they changed the gun laws. They took away our right, and this is from the agreement, the National Firearms Agreement, that all the states and territories then went back and introduced into their parliaments and enshrined in law, that no Australian can use a firearm for self-defense under any circumstances. You can't get a license for it as a civilian. You cannot own a firearm for the purpose of self-defense. Now, it's interesting with equal force laws. It'd be interesting, maybe the lawyers will have a chat or think about this, but if someone pulls up to your house with a gun, comes in with a gun, but in Australia, by the time you go and unlock your gun safe and then go and get your magazine that's separate and then your ammunition that's separate, there's no opportunity to use a firearm. And if you just happen to be cleaning your gun at that time, I'm sure there will be a lot of questions asked. But the point is, legally speaking, you cannot use that for self-defense, lethal or non-lethal method. So pepper spray is another one. Like I said, you can carry it in WA. It's a grey area if you ever actually had to use it. So I saw in Victoria, where I lived and worked for the Libertarian Party. This is David Limbrick. This is who employed me back in their 2022 state election campaign. So this was the big push against Dan Andrews after what had happened in that state during the pandemic, of course. The mood in Victoria and Western Australia telling the experience. I remember my mate Corey White, the comedian, was in Victoria at the same time. We went on Matt Wong's Discernible and just talked about WA to the point where a lot of Victorians were saying to me, you guys actually had it a lot worse in WA. But it was a different experience. Mr. Liberty's from Victoria. I'd love to interview him about his experience. He's still very traumatized about what happened there. So there's been all sorts of stuff going on in Victoria at the moment. I saw someone had been beheaded, machete crimes, knife crimes. I bought in machete amnesty bins, all this crazy stuff. I was walking around Tennessee with a machete. Like, once again, not sure if I'm allowed to do that, but this is the debate that's going on in Victoria, is about the right to self-defense. So this is something that David Limbrick, who's the only surviving member of the Libertarian Party since that election, unfortunately, Tim Quilty, the bloody legend from the bush, didn't hold his seat. There were preference deals and things going on. Politics is a nasty business. Do not recommend. So he wanted a review. He proposed in Parliament a review of the state self-defense laws to be carried out by the Law Reform Commission. We also have a Law Reform Commission in WA who did that fantastic report into WA firearms laws that the state government pissed on, didn't use any of it. So this is that actually makes my point. So he's calling for the Law Reform Commission to have a review into self-defense laws, and he specifically says that he wants pepper spray to be legalized. My problem with this is every day that passes while they're doing their review, which will get blown out, which costs a lot of money to pay these lawyers to do this, people are defenseless. So I'm not sure what the strategy for having a review is, because as we're already seeing in WA, they just blow it out, like they do with the legal action thing, by the way, blow out deadlines. I pay for anything that comes back from them. They're very smart. They are a big adversary, the state. So that didn't get through the parliament, not even to have a review. And then I saw he also said, there's no real certainty if someone invades my house. I've got a baseball bat. I would have said cricket bat and hit them with it. It might be left up to a court whether I get into trouble for that or not. That is true. I think most people naturally feel that they should be able to defend their homes without fear of legal consequences as long as they don't go over the top. Well, that's where I differ, and that's why I'm no longer a member of the Libertarian Party in Australia. Over the top. So you're giving the state the power to decide what's over the top. And as someone with lived experience, if you have a threat coming at you and you need to defend yourself with whatever means necessary, you don't want to hear politicians saying as long as you don't go over the top. Because when you're put in that position, that is the furthest thing from your mind. And you shouldn't even have to consider that, your right to life. So that's what's happening in bloody Victoria. I don't think I'll ever go back to Victoria. I know I've got in-laws there. It pains me to say that. But last time I was in Melbourne before I flew to America, and broad daylight, 11:30 in the morning, walking to the gym to go to the gym in my lunch break, I nearly got attacked. I had some crackhead woman off her face in the street. I was walking that way. She was walking towards me. I was 5 meters from the gym, about to go in. She starts coming, calling me all sorts of names. I was in my workout gear and I was covered up. I wasn't, a lot of women wear a lot less than me to the gym, but good on them. Like, if you've got it, flaunt it. If you don't, flaunt it anyway. That's what my mum says. And she went to follow me into the gym, calling me all sorts of names and telling me she was going to F me up. And I'm just walking along listening to my libertarian podcast or whatever it was. Next minute, and I don't have any way to defend myself apart from my fist, but I would not want to be taken on a cracky. So this was broad daylight in South Melbourne, which used to be a nice area. So I don't know about going back to Victoria. I think it's a failed state. And that says that's someone coming from WA. That's how bad it's getting there. Terrifying. So that's what's happening in Vic. Now, New South, I did want to bring up this as well because I haven't seen my good mate JR, John Ruddock. So he ran on the Senate ticket with me and with David Limbrook back in 2022. I had the pleasure of meeting and working with JR. Such an interesting character. Really love his sense of humor. He's very quirky. And he, a few months ago now, he did send me this, but it slipped by. I'm sorry, JR. I've had a lot of things on my mind. He moved an amendment to the New South Wales Constitution to give people the right to carry and possess firearms. So to make it a right. In his post, he said he spelled out to Parliament why they are immoral, dangerous, and power hungry for denying you the right to own a firearm. Here, I highly recommend watching his speech if you're interested in the libertarian philosophy. And he used to be not aligned with that, by the way, and he's admitted that to me, but he's changed his mind since reading more about this issue, particularly from the lens of when the state has the monopoly on firearms, and by the state I mean the police, the military, and the private security guard for the elite. They have the monopoly on firearms, of which they do, and the people have no rights or are heavily restricted and denied their right. It's a privilege, remember, and you have to go and get your health checked, and now you have to install a 10 mil safe, and now you can have to do a permission slip, go to your bureaucrat for someone to come and hunt on my land, and you can only have 15. But when the state has a monopoly on firearms, the people have no power. And that is exactly why my Second Amendment flag, there it is. This is why it is so important. Because if you do not have the ability to keep your politicians in check, they can become tyrannical. In other words, you won't be living in a free country if they have all the power. Now, I know to some people that might sound a bit crazy or radical or it doesn't sit well with you. And once again, I'm not advocating for every Australian tomorrow to own a gun. No, like they do here, they have some controls. If you're convicted of a high level of crime, not what they've put in WA, a high level of violent crime we're talking about, and committed to a mental asylum, another one, there are restrictions placed on you if you lose your Second Amendment rights because you are proven to do this violent crime or the mental asylum stuff. It's a very different culture here. But Ruddock's idea to put it in the Constitution of New South, I might have to give Rob Crib a call about that. I read through the New South Constitution and WA's Constitution actually too. And like the Constitution of Australia, I have my little book here. There are no individual rights granted to the people in the WA Constitution or the New South Constitution. It's all about how much power should the government have? How much power should the judiciary have? How much power should the states and territories have in this case? And then the few rights that are alluded to in this, e.g., the right to travel between the states and territories, in a time of a declared emergency, we don't have that right. Hence why I was trapped in WA behind a controlled border for 2.5 years, despite my constitution saying I had the right to travel freely between the states and territories. This is my problem with all of this. I'll come full circle and then I'll finish up because I've been rambling away for an hour. This is my frustration with the fight in Australia. When we have nothing, no individual rights enshrined in law, just how hard it is to get our freedoms back when you are up against the behemoth state that keeps growing and growing and growing, encroaching on our lives like octopus tentacles coming out every aspect of our bloody lives now. Not just the firearms. If you're not interested in firearms, throw a topic at me and I'll tell you how the government is responsible or involved in making that harder. Buying a beer? Why do you think it's so expensive? Not just the alcohol tax, the bloody outrageous costs put on the business to comply with some bullshit. Government affects every aspect of our daily life, and that is why we are suffering. Because our power has gone unchecked, because we do not have the means to defend our liberty and ourselves and our lives, even if we're under attack. It is a dire state of affairs in Australia. And the Americans, when not just me, about Mr. Liberty as well, he's got some stories from Victoria, their heart breaks for us and they would do anything to help us. They love Australians. I cannot say enough how warmly I've been welcomed here, how respected I have been here. Completely different, contrasting that to going to a gun event in Australia, how I was treated. It's a different world over here. And Australians, I think we really need to have a look at what we want to do because it's not looking good. And I'm not hearing very good stories. And I think the conversation, just a solution, I don't know, because people were saying, what does she suggest we do? Well, I do have the First Amendment, but I can't. Maybe if you catch me for a beer when I'm back in Perth over New Year's, I can let you know. But I also honestly believe it is time we had a conversation about becoming a republic. And we write a constitution that is written for the people, by the people, that enshrines our right to the fundamental things we need in a liberal democracy: freedom of speech, the right to defend ourselves, voted by the people for the people. We don't want the lawyers writing this. God, no. We don't want the politicians or, the charity group or the not-for-profit group representing your interest. No, the people. It's our country. It has been co-opted and corrupted by these people who, the biggest transfer of wealth during the pandemic, and look at them get richer, laughing to the bank. That's another reason I left. I simply could not afford to live in Australia. And here, cost of living is phenomenally cheaper. $1.75 beers at a servo, when I don't even think I saw that growing up. And I'm an 87 baby. It's completely different.